I'm Dan Strandjord, and I'm an intactivist. I've been out here for 5 years now, outside the University of Chicago Hospital. I grew up here. My father was a professor in the medical school. And this hospital has one of the highest rates of infant circumcision in the country. It's about 80%. And my question to the university is, if we are really at the forefront of medicine, why are we not respecting normal, healthy, functional, erogenous parts of children's bodies?
When my oldest nephew was born 32 years ago, I already knew that circumcision was not something that should be done, that the American Academy of Pediatrics had said there was no medical justification for doing it. And I knew that the rest of the world didn't do it, unless it was for religious reasons, basically. And so when my oldest nephew was born, I didn't say anything. I thought, well, my brother might already know that it's not recommended anymore. And I didn't think it was my business and all that kind of thing, so I didn't say anything. So of course he was cut. I don't think of myself as an evil person or anything, but if you see a child running into the street right next to you, you put your hand down and you stop that kid so the kid doesn't get hurt. And that's the way I see my not saying anything when my nephew was born. And I get very emotional about this. If I had said to my brother that he shouldn't circumcise the kid, my brother would have said, Dan, you're an idiot. But he would have called my sister, who was a pediatrician, and he would have said, Dan's an idiot. He thinks we shouldn't circumcise the kid. And my sister at that point would have said to him, well, there is no reason to do it, and I wouldn't do it when I was in medical school. I wouldn't do it. So if I had said something, or my sister had said something, my nephew would not have been circumcised. And that's one of the really big reasons why I will not shut up. It is our refusing to talk about this that keeps it going. Most parents don't even think about this before the kid is born. They get approached by some doctor in the hospital who says, oh, well, your insurance will pay for it. And so the people think, oh, well, it was done to me. The insurance pays for it. It must be a good thing. The doctors wouldn't be asking me this if it wasn't a good thing. I talked to a number of doctors here before I started my protest. And they all get, oh, there's no medical reason for doing it. And I said, well, what about the human rights issue? What about the medical ethics issue? And as soon as I brought up human rights and medical ethics, the conversation stopped cold. Nobody wanted to discuss it anymore. So I thought, okay, I'm not getting anywhere with the doctors. So Susan Zesch, who's the director of the Human Rights Program here at the University of Chicago, lives in this building. When I found out what she did, I went and asked her, nicely and politely, if I could talk to her about genital integrity for all children, male, female, and intersex, as a human rights issue. This is how she responded to me. I'm going to try and do it the way she did it. I'm Jewish. I know what you're going to say. I don't agree with you. I'm not going to talk to you. And she turned around and, rushing away from me, she accused me. She said, I consider your views to be anti-Semitic. And I'm standing there like, what just happened? One of the most basic things about human rights is that they apply to everybody, no exception. It doesn't matter where you're from, what country, what religion you are, what religion your parents are. It doesn't matter. You have human rights. And one of those basic human rights is called security of the person. Genital integrity, the right to make up your own mind about your own genitals, is part of body integrity. It's part of the security of your person. If you don't own your own body, what do you own in this world? And so I thought, if the doctors won't discuss it, if the human rights people won't discuss it, well, then I will discuss it with anybody who wants to discuss it with me. So I stand outside the hospital. Until the University of Chicago wants to deal with the issues, I think I've got something to do after I swim every day.
Mid-1800s, the English-speaking world began circumcising both little boys and little girls, trying to stop masturbation. They were really concerned about little white kids. In the 1880s, American doctors started saying that we needed to circumcise all black males to keep them from raping white women. For the last 140 years, American doctors have claimed that circumcision will prevent, cure, or at least alleviate almost every known disease or condition you can think of. And whatever the dread condition of the day was, that's what people focused on. So today, people say, or some people are saying, that circumcision will help prevent HIV. Well, here are some other perspectives on this. The United States has the highest rate of circumcision in the industrialized world and the highest rate of HIV in the industrialized world. Europe, which has similar sexual mores and practices as we do, has lower rates of HIV, and they don't circumcise. So it is clear that both circumcised and intact men get HIV, and that it's not whether you have a foreskin or not that's going to be the determining factor. It's, are you having sex without a condom?
Isn't it true that foreskin actually, that having a circumcised penis stops you from getting yeast infection?
No.
It keeps you from getting other infections?
No. There's no difference in STD rates in this country. Or
I respectfully disagree with you.
well, the American Academy of Pediatrics does not recommend infant circumcision. The American Urological Association doesn't recommend it. No national or international medical organization in the world recommends it. Not one.
What's behind this? I mean, what do you?
This is a human rights issue.
It's not really human rights.
Of course it is.
Are you circumcised?
Yes, and I wish I was not. When I was a student here, we used to do female circumcisions also right there in Billings Hospital. We would cut off the clitorises of little girls. Do you think that's a human rights violation?
I think that's a human rights
Okay,
violation.
well then why isn't cutting off a healthy, normal part of a little boy's body a human rights violation?
I think it stops a lot of infections.
No, it doesn't.
On man.
It doesn't.
Some of the studies that I've looked at.
No, people publish studies on all sorts of things, but not one national or international medical organization in the world recommends it, and no other country in the world circumcises the majority or anywhere near the majority of its baby boys without claiming religion as a
So
justification.
what's the fight? You just feel like they shouldn't be circumcised.
You can make up your own mind when you're an adult. If you want to cut off a healthy, normal part of your penis when you're an adult, you can do so. But less than 1 in 500 healthy adult men in this country who was not circumcised as a child will do it to himself as an adult. So what does that tell you about what a man would want with his own penis?
Well, I know a number of people that get yeast infections and a number of things like that that aren't circumcised.
Well,
And
plenty
they
of
wish
circumcised
that they
people
would
get
have been
yeast infections too.
Excuse me. And they wish that they would have been circumcised as a child. They're naturally fearful of doing it as an adult because it's a painful operation. And, naturally...
It's a painful operation to a baby.
Exactly. You're right. But once it's over, it's over. And, being a
But
child...
it doesn't stop you from getting yeast infections.
From what I understand from the studies that I've looked into, it does.
Please look at what
certainly
the
will.
medical organizations say.
I certainly will. I'll look
Because
into
this is not recommended by any national medical organization in the world,
But it's
and no
recommended
other country in the world does this to its baby boys without claiming religion.
recommended by the Most High God, though.
Well, so is female circumcision, but we don't allow that either.
It's not recommended. Circumcision is recommended. I think it's a cleanliness issue, and
It's actually cleaner to have a foreskin. It's much dirtier to be circumcised, and here's why. If you change a baby girl's diaper, you're never supposed
we're
to.
talking about baby
Yes,
boys.
but this is
Let's talk
right.
about baby
Okay.
boys.
But it's the same thing. Boys and girls have a sterile urinary tract. Baby boys are born with a long, tight foreskin that extends past the head of the penis.
Right.
When you cut off the foreskin, the opening to the urinary tract is now sitting there in the open diaper, or in the closed diaper with the poop and
it's
stuff.
dry. It's not wet.
But the opening is sitting there.
Everybody knows that moisture and heat brings bacteria and problems.
And the meatus, the opening to the urinary tract is sitting right there in the diaper.
Have you ever had
When you change when you have a foreskin, any germ that starts to get up that foreskin gets flushed out when the kid pees. The American Academy of Pediatrics says leave the foreskin alone. They don't recommend it.
Yeah, I mean that's your idea. I find
It's not just my idea.
I find different.
Ask the British Medical Association, the Canadian Medical Associations.
Right. I know wherever you have heat and moisture, you're gonna have bacteria.
You have bacteria everywhere.
You know what I mean?
I get a few people like that, but he's obviously circumcised and needs to justify it. I doubt very much that he will actually look at these things from the way he talks, but hopefully he will. But I have these conversations. It happens. Almost every day I have at least one or two very good discussions. Some people just take information. But of the people who stop and talk to me, most of them already agree with me. Probably 80% or more. And while there are certainly people who don't agree with me, very few actually stop to talk to me. So for those people, my attitude is that the sign is out here and they more or less have to go out of their way to ignore it. And if I force them to try and ignore the situation, then maybe one day they will think about it. And so even if I'm not talking to the people that need to be converted, in my opinion, they have to think about it. They see the sign, and even if they go say to somebody, oh, have you seen that crazy old man out there every day? Maybe somebody that they talk to will say, well, maybe he's not so crazy. And maybe they will discuss the issue without me. So I do get the message out to some people. Even if I haven't talked to them, they see me, they will talk to somebody else. And so I make a difference. I've not made enough of a difference because I'm still out here, but I've made a difference.